What did you just say?
That faith is only valid if it's like tangible for things that are reachable. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you can say, if I work hard enough, eventually I have faith eventually that I'll be able to buy a house. You know what I mean? Like that's something that's realistic. It's reachable.
Okay. And what do they say in the church? That they have faith, that they believe in something because of faith. It's not like they believe something is true. Right. It's not like I believe this will come out in the future because I want to do hard work, and it's like you're actually going to put work to it. Right, exactly. But you're talking about something that you haven't even looked into. Right. And you want to assume it's true before you've even gone through the process of logically going through it and understanding it. Right. So now you're not even using your brain to come to a conclusion. So faith is brainless, pretty much. Right. You can't experiment it. You can't test it, and do experiments on it. Right. Exactly. Like, these people are actually trying to show you evidence, and you're like, nah, it's true. What the hell is going on in this world, man? This is people are like this all over the place, man. Like, every church. This is just common. It's not just the Hebrew Israelites are like to the 10th power with this shit. Right. But this is all over. This is in every church. I've seen this everywhere. That's crazy. That's some crazy stuff right there. You want it to be true. That's fine, whatever. But I just want to show you how it's illogical. I'm not saying like you're an idiot. You're not too well studied on this topic. At least not right now. You know? Like, you have to test everything equally. That same skepticism that you use in the courtroom to verify somebody's rape claim, why don't you use that same skepticism for your God claims? Right. That's called special pleading. You have a double standard for biblical claims and other claims. Right. You get the biblical claims a pass. I'm going to believe this because it's my faith. But why don't you use that same logic for everything? Faith is not useful. It's not a reliable method to get you to the correct conclusion. What we have to do is test things, the best way that we could, and the best thing that we have right now is science. Yeah, so the presumption of innocence is you presume somebody's innocence in a court case, and then you test to see if they're guilty. Innocence does not mean not guilty. Right. It's not the same thing. People get that confused. That's a false dichotomy. People don't understand these things. They think innocence and not guilty is the same thing. Right. And then they put themselves in a false dichotomy, and you think you only got two options. So you come to bad conclusions. You got three options, homie. You got three options. You have true, false, and neutral. Yeah. Why you just want to assume that it's true? Because you grew up in biblical beliefs. Yeah. And you have a passion. And it's my personal choice. Well, damn, don't you want to be objective? Right. You don't care about what's true, pretty much. You care about what you like. Yeah, exactly. Well, pretty much. You don't even want to talk about it. Whenever we start talking about it, people get emotional, they retreat. Why don't you talk about it? Like, what you got to say about that? You know you were wrong. Like, you're wrong when you want to assume. You just want to presume guilty, and then you got to prove innocence. Everybody would be in jail. So innocent is not guilty. You think the average person understands that there's a difference between innocence and not guilty? Right. They don't. They don't know how the court system works. Yeah. That's the problem, is that a lot of these people, they just already believe in the Bible. Imagine if the court system worked that way. It's like, yeah, you're innocent, but I have faith that you're guilty. Yeah. That would be crazy. What kind of system would this be? Like, what kind of chaos will ensue because of this type of system? Right. The people will go crazy. People will protest. There'll be damn riots. Every single court case. You're just gonna assume guilt. This is a communist. Yeah, it's a communistic. What is this? It's like a dictatorship. Right. That's how Tazadakia did things. Remember with your halama?
Yeah.
Yeah, she committed adultery. Why do you say that? Oh, because she ran inside the house. What? She ran inside the house, so that means that she committed adultery. Great logic. I'm just gonna assume that.
Right.
Well, it's my faith. What's your problem? Are you going against my faith? Yes. I'm supposed to, handle your faith with gloves and shit? Nah, man. That's like a taboo. It's like, oh, don't talk about people's faith. Why not? So presupposition is a position that somebody assumes and they feel they don't need to provide evidence to support that position. So what that does is really control who has the burden of proof now, because you're pretty much saying because of your faith, you don't have to prove anything. You can just assume it, and you leave it up to people to disprove what you're assuming, which sometimes you can't disprove somebody's claim, and that doesn't make it true just because you can't disprove it. So to have that mind state where you're gonna assume something's true until it's disproved, then you should assume all claims are true until it can be disproved. I can assume and say that Tazadakia did speak to God until it can be disproved that he spoke to God. Now, how can you disprove that he spoke to God? Let's say the passport and the traveling to Israel thing never was included in that claim, and he just claimed that God spoke to him, and you have no way of disproving this, so you're just going to assume it's true. It's no wonder that you're still a Bible believer even after you escape the cult, because that same illogical process that you use to believe in Tazadakia, you use it to believe in God anyways, which Tazadakia realized that all he did was get in the place of that, and now you're replacing God with Tazadakia for the members that are still in there. But for those that left, now you just remove Tazadakia, you still have that illogical process of coming to a conclusion. So you never really learned anything. You just pretty much continued in your beliefs where you want to assume that something is true and you use faith as an excuse. But that's clearly a presupposition, and it's not a justified reason to believe in every claim in the Bible, because everything has to be studied individually. All right, so here's a conversation that actually started on Facebook that inspired me to make this video. I'm just going to read, it was a long conversation, but I'm just going to read the core of the problem right here with this Bible believer that he's a good friend of mine. I love the brother. I've known him for years. But he's just wrong on this issue. Here's the post. It says, San Miguel, I understand perfectly how burden of proof works. It's as easy as picking up a dictionary and reading the definition. It's not that easy. You have to actually understand it and go through examples of it so you can clearly understand it. Just reading a definition one time is not going to be good enough. It takes time. It takes time to understand the issues that you had and the problems and the errors dealing with logic to why you went in the cult in the first place. Now me, I actually really care about those issues, and I didn't want to make the same mistake again. So the best possible way for me to understand that is by studying critical thinking and logic. Now it says, well, he says, what you seem to gloss over is that in a conversation, the burden of proof shifts back and forth. That's true. The burden of proof is interchangeable. That's true, depending on who makes the claim first. What you seem to be glossing over is that you're making the initial claim and you have the burden of proof, and you're saying that you don't have to prove it because you have faith, and you're bringing it and you're giving it to me to disprove it, which is illogical. It's not up to me to disprove something. It's up to you when you make a claim to prove whether that claim is true. If it's not true, then you can be neutral, or I can actually bring out evidence to falsify it. You have no justification for believing that it's true except for using your faith, which is no good. It's useless. It's brainless. Now, what you should be saying is that you're neutral because you don't believe the evidence that Israel Finkelstein brought out about the walls of Jericho. You should say that you're actually neutral about it because you can't prove that it's true or false. But you think that because it can't be proven false, by default it's true, No, it's not true by default. You're still in the neutral position. And you still need evidence to support your true claim. It's that simple. Then he says, in this case, I asked you several times to produce the evidence of when the walls fell. Yes, yet you gave me nothing, which I actually gave him the name of the archaeologist and the actual issue that they're going into. It's as easy as Googling it and trying to see what they actually, why they came to the conclusions that they came to. These are people that are actually doing the hard work while you're sitting down, just clicking away, looking stuff up, not doing anything to prove your case. Here you are shooting down people that are actually trying to verify whether the claim is true. And you don't even care to verify whether it's true. And anytime somebody comes up with evidence to falsify it, you don't even want to accept it. You're not even looking these things up. You don't even know that these things even exist, because you haven't gone through that process. You still believe from whenever you first believed in the Bible. The reason why you started believing in the Bible, you need to analyze that and see if that you had a good reason in the first place. And I bet you that you didn't. Then he says, if I choose to believe something until it can be disproved, so what? This is the problem right here. You want to believe in something before it can be disproved. What happened to the neutral position? Why don't you start neutral and then make your way to a true or false conclusion, or remain neutral if there's no evidence? You don't understand how burden of proof works. I'm sorry. He says, so what? You do the opposite. You see, now this is called projection, because he does things a certain way. He assumes that people are like him and that they think like him. I don't think like you, homie. I don't come to a conclusion and believe that it's false already. Why would I do that when I'm telling you that it's false to come to the true conclusion? That makes no sense. What I do is begin at the neutral position and make my way to a conclusion. I believed once like you. How do you think I came to the conclusion that it's false now? I looked at the evidence. I'm not assuming that it's false. You're assuming that it's true. It's the exact same way the court system is ran. This guy is completely confused. Where do you live? In communist China? Where you have to prove your innocence and you're assumed guilty? Oh my God. It's the exact same way the court system is ran. Innocent until proven guilty. He's doing guilty until proven innocent. He doesn't understand that he's backwards. So in this country's justice system, they choose to believe everyone is innocent until it can be proven otherwise. What he thinks is that innocent is not guilty. Yes, you assume innocence first, because we want to assume that people didn't do the things that they're being claimed. We want to use evidence to support the affirmation claim. There are claims that can affirm something, which would be you trying to say that something is true, and then you could have claims that disconfirm things, saying that it's false. We're addressing the claim that something is true. Not guilty doesn't mean that you're innocent. Not guilty means that they couldn't prove that you were guilty. That doesn't mean that you're innocent. You can still be guilty of a crime, or you can still be found not guilty, and that doesn't mean that you're innocent, because there's no evidence to prove your innocence. They don't address that claim of innocence. They assume innocence, and then they address the claim of guilt. And if you're not found guilty, then you're not guilty. That doesn't mean that you're innocent. I don't know how else to explain it. I think that's the best way I can explain it. Now let's continue reading this so we can see what further issues there are. So he said, that is the same thing for me. I choose to believe something based on my faith until it can be disproved. You don't do that with every claim out there. You only do that with your biblical claims. So that's called special pleading. You have a double set of standards for the biblical claims than you have for anything that's not a biblical claim. If it's a scientific claim, you scrutinize it, you use skepticism, but you don't use that same skepticism for your biblical claims. You think that faith is good enough. So he said, you choose to believe someone based off of what they said, but you have no actual proof. These guys actually went into scientific proofs. They actually dug up things and tested them. What did you do to prove what you believe? This is ridiculous, how people could just sit back in a damn armchair and just wave things off when they haven't done a damn thing to prove what they believe. You don't start off neutral. It just sounds good, so you say it. This is called a straw man argument. He's misrepresenting my position because he doesn't understand it, probably, or purposely. But that's just to make his
assumption sound good or his position sound good. But if he knows that it's wrong for me to assume false and it's wrong for him to assume true, if he's claiming that we're doing the same thing, then you're admitting that it's wrong. Why would you do that same process? Which I'm not doing anyways. You think that that's what I'm doing. That's called the tu quo qui argument. You're trying to call me out for being a hypocrite because I'm doing the same thing you're doing. That's a tu quo qui fallacy. Even if that were true, that still doesn't mean that what you believe is true. So that's another fallacy. I can find like 5 fallacies just within this conversation alone. So then he says, in any case, it's your choice, just like it's mine, to believe what I choose to. I don't believe what I choose to. I'm forced to believe something based on the evidence, unlike you. In any case, it's your choice, just like it's mine, to believe what I choose to. There is no error in that. There definitely is an error in that. The only error would be to continue to believe something when it has been proven without a shadow of a doubt that is incorrect. If there's no evidence that is incorrect or true, you still can be neutral. What don't you understand about that? You don't have to make a true or false choice. That's a false dichotomy. You have a third option. If there's no evidence, then you can say not guilty. Not guilty would be the neutral claim because you don't have evidence either way. Innocent would be that you know that the claim is false because you have proof for the innocence. And then you can also claim that the claim is true if you have proof that the person is guilty. That's how that works. Now, there's more, but I think that's good enough just to show the inconsistencies of Bible believers. And it begins with that presupposition that their faith is good enough to assume whatever they want. So believing that guilty until proven innocent is okay to believe and to assume to be the assumption, then what's going to happen is what happens in Japan. 99% of the people that get indicted are charged as guilty or are found guilty. There's only 4 countries that still practice this guilty until proven innocent, old way of thinking, pretty much, which it would be China, which is a communist regime, the Chinese Communist Party. Then you got Myanmar, which is formerly Burma, the Burmese people. This is how they run their court system. And then there's North Korea with Kim Jong-un, or whatever the hell his name is, if he's still alive. That's how they run their system, because now it's easier for the government to prosecute people. Why would you want this system as a black man in America, where you see that this is an issue with the police, where they're assuming guilt or assuming that something is true first, and then it's up to you to prove that you're innocent or to prove that it's false. You can't always do that, so that logic fails. And I don't know, I understand some of y'all are doing Bible studies on the Marco Polo. I don't know what they're teaching you on there, but it seems like you guys are still using that same illogical process of assuming something and reversing the burden of proof on others, and now it has to be proven wrong, and you put yourself in a position where you come to a conclusion first, and then you try to make your way, to come to that conclusion and make it make sense, which is what the people in the ICGJC do when Tazadaki gives a prophecy. The prophecy said that they were going to go to Israel. That's the conclusion. They believe that as the conclusion, that Tazadaki is taking them to Israel. But now that he's dead, they still have to make that conclusion true. That's the problem. They already came to that conclusion, but now that he's dead, it should be a conflict. But since they already came to a conclusion, the way they resolve that is try to say that Tazadaki will resurrect. So that way the conclusion is still true. This is what you're doing. If you can't see that, I don't know how else to tell you, bro, because that's the main issue that got you in the problem in the first place, and you haven't seemed to learn yet. So I'm not trying to say that I'm smarter or better than you, but I did put in a lot of hours in learning how to not get caught up in that situation again. And I suggest that y'all out there do the same thing.